You know that feeling when you pop something into an online translator and what comes out is just completely bizarre? Well, today we're going to open up our study guide and figure out exactly why that happens. We're diving headfirst into the super interesting world of translation theory. And trust me, you're about to see it's way, way more than just swapping one word for another. All right, so section 1, more than just words. And the big question here is, why doesn't word for word work? I mean, we have dictionaries, right? So why is translation so incredibly hard? Why can't we just do a simple swap? Okay, let's take a classic example. How do you translate break a leg? Now, we all know what it really means, right? It's just a quirky way to wish an actor good luck. But imagine translating that literally into another language. You're not wishing them well anymore. You're probably just totally confusing them. Or even worse, they might think you actually want them to get hurt. It's the perfect example of where things can go really, really wrong. So expressions like this have a name. They're called idioms. And what they show us, really clearly, is that meaning isn't just in the dictionary. It's baked right into our culture. You can think of an idiom as a kind of cultural inside joke. It's a piece of shared knowledge that just doesn't make sense if you're not in on the secret. Okay, section 2, source versus reader. And this whole problem of culture getting in the way of words, well, it leads every translator to a really tough choice. In fact, it's the great translation debate. And it really all boils down to this one crucial question. Where does a translator's loyalty lie? I mean, look at this little seesaw. On one side, you've got the original source text. On the other, the new reader. So who do you serve? Do you stick to the original, preserving every single detail of the author's style? Or do you focus on making sure the new reader gets it, making it sound clear and natural to them? It's a constant push and pull. So a theorist named Peter Newmark actually gave us a fantastic way to think about this. He came up with 2 key ideas. First, you have semantic translation. This is the source-focused approach. It's all about sticking as close as you possibly can to the original words and structure. But then on the other side, you've got communicative translation. And this one is reader-focused. The goal here isn't to translate the words, but to create the exact same effect or feeling in the new reader. So, which is best? Well, the answer is it totally depends on what you're translating. Think about it. If you've got a super serious legal document, you can't get creative. Every single word matters, so you have to go with a semantic approach, no question. But what about a marketing slogan? Something like, just do it. A word-for-word translation would probably be meaningless. There, you've got to capture the feeling, the motivation, and that's a job for communicative translation. All right, on to section 3. Purpose is everything. So if the choice isn't always about being loyal to the source, and it's not always about pleasing the reader, how on earth does a translator decide what to do? Well, there's a really cool modern theory that gives us a powerful guiding light. It's called Skopos theory. Skopos is actually the Greek word for, you guessed it, purpose. And the core idea of this theory is just so simple and elegant. It says that the most important thing to think about in any translation is its purpose. What is this translated text supposed to achieve? What is it trying to do? The answer to that one question is what drives the entire strategy. And what's really cool is how Skopos theory sets up a kind of pyramid of rules. Right at the very top, the most important thing is the Skopos rule. The translation has to achieve its purpose. That's non-negotiable. Then, the next level down is the coherence rule, meaning it has to actually make sense to the person reading it. And only after you've nailed those 2 do you get to the bottom level, the fidelity rule, which is about being loyal to the source. So you see, in this way of thinking, purpose trumps everything else. Let's move on to section 4, inside the translator's toolkit. So that's the big picture theory, right? But how do translators actually pull this off day to day? Well, let's open up their toolbox and check out the techniques of the trade. First up, we've got the direct techniques. Now, these are the ones you use when you're lucky, when the source language and the target language are pretty similar. They let you stick really close to the original text. And here are a few of those direct tools. Borrowing is the easiest one. We just snatch a word from another language and make it our own, like cafe or kimono. Calque is a little more clever. That's when you do a super literal word-for-word translation of a phrase, and it sticks, like how skyscraper is basically a direct copy of the German word for it. And of course, sometimes for simple sentences like I want a glass of water, a good old-fashioned literal translation just works perfectly. But what happens when the languages are really different? When a direct translation would just sound totally clunky or even flat out wrong? Well, that's when translators have to get more creative and pull out their indirect or oblique techniques. Okay, this is where the real artistry comes into play. You've got transposition, which is all about changing the grammar around. In English, we say red ball, but in French, you have to flip it to say boule rouge, literally ball red. Then there's modulation, which is about shifting your perspective. We say top floor, but in French, they say dernier étage, which means last floor. Same thing, just a different way of thinking about it. And finally, you have equivalence. This is for when there's no direct translation at all, so you have to find the cultural parallel. Like, how do you say ouch? In French, it's aïe. The words have nothing in common, but the feeling and the function are exactly the same. Okay, section 5, translation versus transcreation. Now, that last tool we talked about, equivalence, where you're basically reshaping the message to fit a new culture, that leads us directly to a huge, really important idea in the modern world, especially when it comes to things like marketing and ads. And this is the core difference between plain old translation and something we call transcreation. Look at the chart. Regular translation, its goal is to preserve meaning and be accurate. It's perfect for things like technical manuals or user interface text. But transcreation, its goal is to recreate the emotion and the intent of the original. This is what you need for taglines, for ad campaigns, for anything where the feeling is what matters most. It's why you need a bilingual copywriter for this stuff, not just a skilled linguist. It's a whole different ballgame. So let's wrap this up with the key takeaways. What's the bottom line? First, translation is a strategic choice, not just a lazy word-for-word swap. Second, the purpose, the Skopos of the text is what tells you which strategy to use. Third, translators have this amazing toolbox of direct and indirect techniques to get the job done. And finally, remember that transcreation isn't about meaning, it's about recreating emotion. It's a creative act. And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on, especially now. As AI translation gets scarily good at accuracy, at the nuts and bolts of it all, will the most valuable human skill left in this field actually become transcreation? Is our future in being the ones who can bridge those deep cultural and emotional gaps that a machine just can't feel? It's definitely something to think about.